call the Board of Supervisors to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Supervisor Gielmi. Here. Supervisor White. Here. Supervisor Horton. Here. Supervisor Schrudy.
Here.
Mayor Bagwell.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you so much. Do I see Pastor Pat? Oh, there he is. That's okay. That's all right. I love it. Yeah.
Good morning, all.
Good morning.
Day after Valentine's. Today's scripture is Psalm 33, 11 and 12. The counsel of the Lord stands forever, the thoughts and plans of his heart to all generations. Blessed, fortunate, prosperous, and favored are those of God, the nation who calls the Lord their God, the people whom he has chosen as an inheritance. Lord God, we come before you this morning and we just ask you in your gracious and benevolent authority over us, Lord, that you would bless this day, bless this room, bless the decisions that those have been put in authority over the city, Lord, that have wisdom and guidance and counsel. Lord, we pray for our city, we pray for our state, Lord, and we pray for the nation that is one nation under God, Lord, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you for that. And Lord, we celebrate that today as we begin our pledge. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Well, do you want to lead us in the pledge? That was so fitting.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Okay, we are now on to agenda item number 5, which is opening public comment. Mr. French? Brew, you wanted to? It's on consent. You want to wait? Is that what you're asking to do? Okay. Let me go through in the list, and then I take anybody that didn't sign up. So I'd be happy to do that. Then I have Anita Whitmore. Whitmore? Okay, thank you.
Ma'am, can you just press the button on that microphone until it turns green? Thank you. Okay. I hear you. It does.
Good morning. NRS 268.412 provides for a city by ordinance to regulate, control, and prohibit excessive noise which is injurious to health or interferes with the comfortable enjoyment of life. When the BAC began to hold concerts outdoors, nearby residents were concerned about loud music disrupting their peace and continuing late into the night. 10 p.m. was established as the end time for the concert. Today, the end time for the Levitt Amp concerts is 10 p.m. With the building of new neighborhoods, we may be seeing more neighborhoods enacting HOA rules. With the many new multifamily residences being built, we are seeing mixed housing existing close together. For example, the multifamily units being built on Budeye Way is adjacent to the Stanton Park homes on Desatoya Way. NRS 118A.310G pertains to basic obligations outlined in the rental agreement between tenant and landlord. I spent a few years assisting in the management of an apartment property, and the lease had language that tenants were to observe quiet time between 10 p.m. and 8 a.m. If the apartments have a quiet time obligation in the lease, there is an expectation of quiet time between specific hours. However, without a specific noise ordinance in the city, the residents of an adjacent housing neighborhood may have a gathering with excessively loud music into the early hours of the morning. This may be disruptive to multifamily housing residents that live nearby. With a citywide ordinance that regulates and controls excessive noise, we may observe an increase of more comfortable enjoyment of life equally throughout the city, rather than islands where HOAs exist or areas that, because of their economic differences, may not experience this issue. In researching the existing noise ordinances of counties and towns and cities in Nevada, it was very interesting to see the differences between them. Some were very basic and others were very detailed. I did provide comments online that detail this somewhat extensively, like close to 60 pages. with all of the counties, their noise ordinances, if they did have them. And so I would like to say, if any of you would like to meet with me to discuss this, then I would make myself available. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next signed up, I have Jim Shirk.
Good morning. At a recent board meeting, there was a discussion of a justice of the peace appointment. Bagwell argued the public should determine the best candidate in the June primary. If the public should determine this, as you stated, Bagwell, then this should apply to the same principle to your position as well. Because if you run for re-election in 2024 and somehow win, then in 2026, you must retire from the position as you will be termed out. The public will not have any vote whatsoever as to whom will replace you, and your so-called philosophy of giving the citizens right to vote to determine the best candidate is thrown in the trash. An article in the local paper had Bagwell pushing students to attend school. I suggest that you apply the same principle to our city manager to attend the Board of Supervisors meeting rather than constantly work on her computer during the entire meeting. Bagwell should return the campaign funds she has received from our local gas company. As we all know, our monthly bill is extremely high, and accepting our monthly gas bill money to fund your campaign is not right on any level. The same local gas company again uses our monthly payment to fund the mayor's State of the City address, which will ironically not address anything that will improve our community on any level. The city staff wants to wash $100,000 in fines from the books because they are not collectible. Then this same city staff wants to hire a debt collection company to do what they cannot do for another $50,000. Should we accept and reduce the city staff to help balance the budget? Additionally, there is $600,000 lost from the ambulance fund. Maybe the state of the city lunch, the mayor will have a solution. I seriously doubt she will even mention this. To put this in clearer context, every year staff clears this as a loss of funds, but do nothing to curtail it from happening year after year after year. Citizens are entitled to know how the board votes on agenda items. The city should post on their website how votes were tallied within 24 hours. This is separate from requiring the board's approval of the minutes of the meeting. Their approval is not needed or required to inform citizens how they voted. It is the citizens' right to know. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry, I cannot read it. Is there a Drew? Okay. Good morning. And if you'll push the button, it'll turn green and you'll identify yourself and you can go.
Good morning. My name is Drew. I'm not an alcoholic. Well, that's not what this meeting is about. But what this meeting is about is informing the public of potential problems, solving problems, and mitigating issues. I did a public records request based on some other incidents. Carson City has deleted 11,653 public comments. So I'd point you to Article 1, Section 9 of our Nevada Constitution. Freedom of speech, freedom of press, not to mention the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. Now I said 11,653. Now multiply that number by $65,000. There was a man in Woodland Park, Colorado, a couple of years ago, go look him up. He got $65,000 from Woodland Park, Colorado for doing exactly what Carson City has done 11,653 times. Now, if you take that number and extrapolate that out, that's $750 million of liability for the city. Maybe you guys should look at that. Second of all, I have filed a lawsuit against Carson City, Deputy Jason Bueno, Deputy Palmar, Sheriff Furlong, Jason Woodbury, and others Why? Because I was illegally arrested for recording. They said it was because I had a blue shirt on. Deputy Bueno did a 39-second investigation from the time he stepped out of his patrol vehicle till he had me in handcuffs because I had a camera in a public parking lot from walking down a public roadway. Next, Jason Bueno, Deputy Bueno, put me in the back of his patrol vehicle. It was a 95-degree day. He came and he rolled up the window in the back of the patrol vehicle. I was there for about 28 minutes. I just got the video from Public Information yesterday, or the day before that, and I watched myself going from being a very dry person. I even mentioned that I was being hotboxed in the video as he shut the door and shut me in there. You guys hotboxed me. I lost 8 pounds that day. I've been trying to mitigate this issue since August 30th of 2022. The Nevada Attorney General's office lost my complaint. Jason Bueno lied on the stand in front of a judge under oath. There's a problem here. I would ask you, the elected officials, to look at it. And also I'd ask all of you guys to look at the Supreme Court oral arguments in O'Connor versus Garnier versus Ratcliffe.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you. You have a good
sir.
day.
You too. Okay, I don't have anyone else signed up. Now, okay, Denny?
Denny French, Carson City, Nevada. Thank you. I'm not standing up, but I am standing up for some considerations. First off, thank you for supplying me with this. It is very helpful. I appreciate it. And thank you, Mayor, for your time yesterday. And thank to the the governor's staff for listening to me and reviewing their considerations for reviewing and coming up with a statement from him about artificial turf. I intend to pursue it. I wanted to bring up several individuals that have pursued their concerns about things, and I can't find it. Stella Thormson. She brought up a deal, and she ended up getting a bill set up for people with head injuries and such. I'm very pleased, and some of my issues, the glasses, the hat, help mitigate my issues due to other issues. And today they seem to be acting up, so I apologize for that. And it's frustrating to me as well as it is for you, I'm sure. The artificial turf to me is a consideration of safety and health. When I worked to become an EMT, the first thing was, if they're not breathing, they're going to die in 2 minutes. The next thing, if they're bleeding out, you have maybe a little bit more time, but you address that next. And things have an order of getting addressed. When it comes to child safety, I don't tell them to go stand too close to the fireplace. I don't want them to touch a hot pot. I want them to learn through example and experience, but not through the pain of a mistake that I would have allowed them to make because I wasn't diligent. I feel we're not being diligent on this particular item. I think our due diligence would be to say, is there a chance that this is going to be harmful to our kids, to our families, to our environment? How can we not be concerned about this to the point that we study it to its nth degree? I am rather scattered in my interests, but they're mostly safety and health and environment. And this touches on all of those, safety and health and environment. And I appreciate you all looking into it deeper. If I suggested a study, you would say, oh, Denny, you're cherry picking. If I don't suggest one, you will maybe just go to Google. And the thing is that you go to Google, you're going to find a lot of manufacturers. It's $1 million industry. It's employing huge amounts of people. I can't ignore that. That's employing maybe my neighbor. But if I tell them it could be poisonous and toxic to their children in this environment, would they rethink that? Would they maybe go to another employment? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there any other? Okay, Ms. Orloff.
Good morning, Robin Orloff. I'd like to bring up again The Prison Hill Trail 3 that is proposed for Prison Hill, it's a done deal, I hear, but I never think anything is ever a done deal, I guess. And we just received the 90% engineering plan that went to the stakeholders. And I'm just continue to be appalled that we're putting in what looks like a road on conservation easement property in open space. It's governed by 1306. It's governed by the conservation easement. You've all heard me say this before. It's broadly interpreted, apparently. The conservation easement is. I'm wondering why that is by the Open Space Advisory Committee, why it was decided it be broadly interpreted. And it's an engineered road. It's $2 to $3 million. It's by AASHTO standards. I think there was some concern on the board what AASHTO is and if it applies and why it should be applied to this particular road, which to me looks like a road, not a trail. When I talked to the U.S. Forest Service, I said, do you use AASHTO on your trails? And they said, well, we don't if it's within city limits, never within city limits. I mean, it is when it's within city limits, never outside of city limits. So maybe Prison Hill is considered within city limits, but I think spiritually and just how it looks, it's wild. It's supposed to be kept wild. I'm going to refer to the conservation easement again, page 7, number 13, general provisions. Controlling law. The laws of the United States of America and the state of Nevada shall govern the interpretation and performance of this conservation easement. State of Nevada NRS 111.390 to 440 is referred to in the conservation easement as a law, Nevada law, to apply to this. And that law says definitions, easement for conservation means non-possessory and interest of a holder in the property that retains and protects natural, scenic, or open space values of real property, protects natural resources, maintains or enhances the quality of water or air, preserves the historical, architectural, paleontological, and cultural aspects of the real property. And I guess it's all language and we're broadly interpreted, but are we protecting the natural resources by putting in this road with road engineering equipment that's going to go in and just mow through natural sagebrush ecosystem in the foothill of this property, and putting in a road that looks like Carson River Trail 2, which is in the viewshed of our historic Silver Saddle Ranch, which is very, very impactful in my position, in my opinion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. I don't see any other. We're going to move on then to agenda item 6, which is approval of our minutes of January 18th, 2024. Does any member have any corrections? Seeing none, Supervisor Giomi, a motion, please.
I move to approve the Carson City Board of Supervisors and Carson City Liquor and Entertainment Board meeting minutes from January 18, 2024 as presented.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Okay, if you'll all join me on the floor, we will do our length of service presentations. We've got a good crowd today. I think some good names too, to see how well I can do. Maybe I should do number 2 first. Okay, we're going to start with a fire captain. So Sean will come up. How about Rafi Atashian? I knew that wasn't going to go well. Somehow I knew it. Since childhood, nothing different. Thank you so much for your service. It is so appreciated. Oh, 25 years. I don't know that I could ask for 20. I have this common little thing where I ask. Yeah. How many more?
At least 5 more.
At least 5. Well, that's not bad. That's not bad.
So Captain Atashian is a core leader in our organization. He was recently promoted to captain about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago now. He is a member of our technical rescue team, which that is a lot of additional above and beyond training. He's also been instrumental in mentoring and training our driver operators, something he has a tremendous passion about. and we have a lot of safe drivers on the road because of Raf. He is a quiet leader in the fire station and is known for his quick wit and occasional sarcasm. But for 25 years, the sacrifices he has made for our community and the leadership he has provided is second to none. And so, Rafi, congratulations.
Okay. All right, I'm going to try not to mess this one up. We'll see if I can do it. How about Thomas Miller? A marshal bailiff for us for 20 years. 20 years. Okay, so he said 5 more. 10. You know, no, I like the 10. I heard that. Thank you. You heard it, right? Thank you so much for your service. It's so appreciated.
Thank you, Mayor. Hold on. So we brought Thomas in to be the marshal bailiff about 4 years ago. He's got the rest of his years have been with the Carson City Sheriff's Office. Maybe Sheriff Furlong should be up here too, with a lot of duties with the Sheriff's Department. But he was one of our court deputies for 5 years before he came on as a marshal. And the court deputies get to scout how they interact with the public, how they interact with the defendants and the lawyers and the judges and everything. And it takes a good, right kind of a mix to be a effective marshal. And it's an important decision for the judge because this is the face of the court for most of the time. I'm very pleased that we hired Thomas to be that represent Department 1. He does a great job with the people. He does a great job with the attorneys. He can handle problems if they arise, but the best skill is that making sure that problems don't arise, right? And that's and just making sure that everyone feels like they're being treated fairly, and that's what we're all about. We try to be all about there in Department 1. He's a range master. He does some training for DAS, maybe someday for some of the judges out there at the range. We'll get around to that sometime. But Thomas does a great job, and I'm pleased to have him aboard. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Nicholas Wentworth, our Parks Project Manager. It is hard for me to believe it's been 10 years. That's kind of like me. Okay. But I was like, really, that went fast. And 25 more. No? I'm trying.
I'll think it over.
Probably not? Well, then you're not getting this. Thank you so much for all you do for our park system.
So I have to keep my thoughts, I have to prepare something, otherwise I'll be all over the place. So Nick Wentworth started with the city 10 years ago as a park maintenance worker. Shortly after, he was promoted to park maintenance coordinator, which included oversight of Lone Mountain Cemetery, where he made important and lasting changes to the operation there. This was a great fit for Nick, as he has a real passion and interest for history. He even led interpretive talks at the cemetery to help educate residents about its importance and the special stories about all that are buried there. Nick was then promoted to park project manager, where he oversees all park planning, design, and construction projects, which represents the city's reinvestment into the park system for future generations. Nick's field experience and skill with irrigation and heavy equipment operations, implementation of safety protocols, brings a real wealth of knowledge and importance and resources to the parks team. He's married, he's a devoted father of 2 boys. He often coaches his kids' sports teams. He's on the board of Carson City Little League. He loves outdoors, hunts, fishes, makes killer salsa, great venison jerky, but he does burn Pop-Tarts. We're proud and honored to have Nick as part of our team.
Oh, well done. Well done. Okay, Cesar Pacheco? Ha! I got one. Okay, deputy sheriff for 5 years. I do get to say 25 more, right?
Correct.
Oh, see? Now, that's because you all love working with Carson City because we're all such a good team. Thank you so much for your service. It's so appreciated.
Oh, I think he comes from a long family of law enforcement. Just about everybody's engaged at one point or another. Miller, congratulations. 15 years with us first. They went to the beard thing and he had to go that way. Deputy Pacheco is assigned to our detention division, and this is critical, including the next one up. Just does a fantastic job. He's an expert in every area of the detention facility, as the board knows when they do their walkthroughs of the facility. He is just a fantastic, new, if you want to call it a 5-year, almost rookie, not quite. You were past that hump. Congratulations, Deputy.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, I think we were working on them today. All of you must have started around the same time with these names. Okay, how about Brendan Van Booge? Van Buge. Come on up. 5 years as a sheriff's support specialist.
This one really is significant to the board. It's significant to the courts, significant to so many things that we don't talk about and we don't hear about very often. Many years back, the Board of Supervisors was addressing the issue as well as the courts with how to comply with Supreme Court guidances on pre-release programs to ensure that people were not jailed and held in jail purely for their financial instability, if you will. And Mr. Van Buge was selected by us in real support with the court systems, the district court, the justice courts, everybody involved to spearhead that project inside the detention facility. He now trains all of our officers as well as our civilians in there to make sure that we comply with those requirements and that people are not wrongfully held inside that facility. I could not appreciate you more, and thank you very, very much. Congratulations on your years.
Not to be forgotten, 25 more, right? What? That works. Oh, the new 60. There you go. Okay, and our last one for today to celebrate is Tofi with our juvenile services therapist, mental health. Oh. Maybe the most important. Oh. Oh. Can we just keep the dog here all day? Oh.
I've heard that a couple times.
Yeah. Well, it says we can pet. See that? We got permission on the side.
Just to get rid of the confusion, this is Toffee and I'm Frank. Okay? I work in detention along with Toffee, but we're not here to talk about me today. Just real quick, Toffee has an interesting story, and by the way, my chief, Allie, asked me to write this because I'd be talking for an hour about this young lady. Toffee's, she's got a pretty interesting story. Try to break it down in about a minute for you. She came from a breeder in Hungary at a young age. She went to drug dog training school or drug detection school in Indiana. She was acquired by Carson City Sheriff's Department to work at the high school. Long short of the story, however you want to put it, is she elected to change career paths. She wasn't quite as assertive, as you can see, as some of their dogs they like. Other than that, we got extremely lucky getting her on our side. She came to Carson City Juvenile Services as a service animal. Since that time, she's been, without a doubt, one of the most impactful additions to our team at Carson City Juvenile Services. She comforts juveniles in time of need, whether it's depression, anxiety, anger issues, juveniles with suicidal ideations, as well as bringing staff anxiety down due to high-stress situation and long hours. I feel the most important lesson Toffee has taught all of us is just how to listen and be non-judgmental towards the juveniles that we serve.
Certificate on her behalf. I don't know. This is pretty special. Look at how calm, right? And that's what the juveniles must love. And maybe a few pets they love to do too, right? Yeah, pretty much.
About 9 hours a day.
9 hours a day. I love it. So if others want to jump in the picture, that we're family, friends, just coworkers, anybody want to jump in? Come on, get in the picture and celebrate. That's what this is all about, is just saying hooray. Thank you all again for your service. Yeah, we should maybe be, really, again, thank you. Oh. Is this your son? Yeah.
We're going to a volleyball tournament after this, so I was like, oh, I'm just gonna bring him with me.
Absolutely. Hi, what's your name? Everett? Hi, Everett. Is that Dad? Yeah? Dad did good, huh?
No, not yet.
Now
Not
can-
yet.
oh.
Not yet.
That was pretty good. Thank
I know, he's
you.
like,
Yeah, it's wonderful. Thank you. Oh, boy. I did, before I ever even ran, I got a legal opinion on that, just so I wouldn't run. Give it just a minute. I'm gonna let that clear. Okay. Are you ready? Almost? I'm still recording. Okay. All right, we're gonna come back to order. That was fun. Tofi was definitely a hit. Okay, we're gonna move to the consent agenda. Item 11A and 13B will be pulled off for discussion. So may I have a motion?
Yeah, I
on
move
the-
to approve the consent agenda consisting of item 8A, 9A, 10A, 11B, 12A, 13A, 13C, D, and E, and 14A, all as presented.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. I'll let the record reflect it was unanimous. We're now going to take up agenda item 11A. Mr. White, you asked for that to be pulled. Do you have a specific question?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
In the background and issues section of the staff report, it says that this,
Could you speak into the mic a little more? Thank you. Can't hear.
there we go.
Here we go.
It says that this write-off is for between July 23 and December 23, but when I look through the spreadsheet here, I find dates clear back to 2020, so I'm just wondering, first of all, since we do this a couple of times a year, how do we have dates from services clear back to 2020 that are just now coming forward?
It's a very good question. At some points, they try to collect and they put them on payment plans, and so they get little amounts of money here and there, and then suddenly they stop paying, and the rest of the amount is deemed uncollectible. So the 6-month period is the 6 months that I bring it forward, but that 6-month period is when they determine that the payments is not going to be collectible. So it may be a year prior or more that those payments they've been trying to collect, but at the 6-month period is when they've determined that it's not collectible.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Chief, you had something?
Just a little bit of background on collection. So the process as we provide a service to somebody, provide a transport, they receive a bill through our billing services. Typically what they will do is they will send a bill and then try and contact by phone. There are at least 3 notices sent. That process takes a little over 6 months. If we're not receiving payments or unable to contact during that time, it gets turned over to a separate collections company. And then at that point, they try and pursue collections. So some of these may be a year or 2 years in arrears from the actual date of service provided.
Okay. This has been a recurring theme for a number of years. And at one point,
you know, it was generally somewhere around 500,000 that gets written off. This one seems to have taken a bit of an increase, and I'm just wondering if you have any sense as to any trends, new trends that you're seeing that perhaps we need to come up with a different way of providing services to some folks that we know aren't going to pay.
Sure. Again, Sean Slayman for the record. Probably the increases you will see is there are multiple facets to that. Some of it is people that have no address, we're not able to contact, or no forwarding information. Some have moved, for instance, a trend we're starting to see is some people are moving out of Medicare and into private HMOs. Under Medicare, the individual doesn't get billed at all. Medicare covers what they cover, and that is it. Under an HMO, there is usually an insurer and payer, responsible payer portion, and that is a little bit of a challenge to get people to pay their payer portion.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
That's all I have.
Any other member have any questions? No? Okay, thank you. Public comment? You indicated you wanted to do that. Brew, come up.
So my name is Brew, for the record, Carson City resident for 9 years officially last week.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. So this item bothered me because, as Maurice pointed out, the $604,000 for 6 months. But what really got me was the spreadsheet was attached, was not sorted. And whenever I see something that isn't logically sorted, I assume you're trying to put something over on me.
Oh, I didn't.
So I looked at it, and I'll put this on the record. For calendar 2020, 3 runs for $2,400. For 21, 5 runs for $267. For calendar 2022, 287 runs for $258,000. The first half of calendar 23, 452 runs for $298,000. And the second half, which would be the first half of the fiscal year, $41,000. Just wanted to point out that this list probably should have been sorted. And the second thing, and I know this is fraught with risk, but I'd kind of like to know what percentage of the uncollectibles are frequent flyers. Because as Maurice pointed out, there are numbers of alternatives for the frequent flyers. And last, I saw this as an opportunity for the fire department to sell CC Core Plus, because that would mitigate some of these fees. And that's all I had. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Is there any other public comment on this item? Okay. Thank you. I'll take a motion. Supervisor White.
I move to approve the application.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Thank you. The motion passed unanimously. We'll go then to, was it 13B? Yes, 13B. Sorry, let me get there. This is the joinder contract for Summit Forests, Inc. for the 40 acres of fuel. Chief Slayman, I'll go again. Is there a specific question or a comment that you're wanting to make, Mr. White?
I need some clarification on the project itself and a statement to make.
Yeah. I remembered. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. We did this once before. You'll be consistent. We like that. Okay. What's your question specifically? And I'm sure the
So-
chief will try to answer.
I'm a little confused about exactly what the project is going to entail. Page 284, where I see that prescription B is being removed from the original application, and we're only going to work on prescription A. I see that red border on that map within that parcel, and then there's a shaded area. So what part of this parcel are we actually going to be working on?
Sean Slayman for the record. It is 40 acres within that encompass. I don't have that map exactly in front of me to be able to let you know what that is, but it's been an area that has been identified and approved through the Forest Service.
Right. It seems like before, the work was going to take place within this red bordered area, which is actually substantially less than the 40 acres of the total parcel. So the question is, are we working on
That's not.
40 acres or 35 acres, which is what the previous prescription was?
The total area identified is 40 acres.
Okay. If you look at page 285, the assessor's parcel number 007-01101 is actually for the parcel that's been taken out, which is prescription B. Prescription A is 02102. So I think we have to have a correction there, because it looks to me like the wrong parcel is identified in the application here.
We'll take a look at that. Thank you.
Okay. And then finally, as I said before, when this came to us, I do not believe that it is appropriate to spend taxpayers' money to improve private property. And I won't be supporting this agenda item.
Does any other member have a question, comment? No?
I just have a comment. Unfortunately, fire costs so much money to fight, and so I think opportunities for mitigation are incredibly important, and we should take those opportunities before there's a catastrophic fire that not only burns that area, but also then impacts other areas. So I think this is a responsible use.
Okay, and then just, I don't know, when I was reading through part of this on the Exhibit A, that was an old permit from the original document. So again, you may have to I just wanted to clarify, they'll adjust the
We will,
permit
yes.
pursuant to what you're actually going to do with
Right.
the reduction of the
That is correct.
acreage. Okay,
Right, there's,
all right, because this is old. I just,
this appears to be old documents.
Right.
That have not been updated
Right.
to the current agenda item. And I just think we need to be squared away on what's actually going to take place.
and I think that's on the new Exhibit A, but they'll adjust the permit appropriately when you go to do the work
That is
and
correct,
stuff.
yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any public comment on this item? Mr. French?
Denny French, thank you very much, Mayor. I ditto Supervisor White's position on taxpayer money and the use of it. I also recognize Supervisor Schuette's concerns about fire. As having just a short bit of experience with the Department of Forestry and the controlled burns and the back burns that I was involved in, fire is scary. If you're smart, you're respectful of it, you think ahead so that you can avoid opportunities for those things to happen. However, the funding of this should probably set on the owner of the properties. If we've determined there's a danger or a hazard, they come to my yard, they talk to me about my lawn. That was a consideration to this city.
But they don't mow it for you, do they?
No. Thank you, supervisors.
Thank you. So I understand both sides of this, but this particular grant allows work to be done on private property because, correct? That's why it's being done. The grant is looking to reduce fuels
Mhm.
that impact the entire community. I mean, the objective is, while that may be on private property, the fire that would occur would impact other people's private property and communities, and the losses and potentials out
Public
there.
property.
Yes.
Right? It's really a public hazard. So to that question, do we have the right to go in and tell a private property owner that they have to cut down trees?
We do. We have, John Slayman for the record again, we have worked with the property owners on this, and they support this project to clear the area out. And again, there are private lands, there are city, county lands, there are state lands and federal lands that are impacted by this area.
The whole thing? Yeah, okay.
And I do recognize that it is legal.
I got it.
That doesn't make it right. And I won't impugn anybody for being rich, but this same group of people have an adjacent property that is for sale for $25 million. I think they could conjure up their own 167 to take care of the liability they are creating on their private property.
All right. If anybody, public comment, come on up.
Wasn't planning to sit at the microphone today. I'm Rose Kruger, and I'm a citizen of Carson City resident. I got a question. Where has this grant come from?
The forestry department?
Forestry Department. Is this a federal requirement for that? No, is this all falling under federal rules or our rules?
The grant is under the U.S. Forest Services.
Okay. Well, that makes a difference to the question of private property and taxpayers paying for it. So that's why I wanted to ask it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Is there any other public comment? Okay. See, no, we don't repeat. Thank you. Okay, then I'll bring it back up here. Supervisor Giomi.
I move to award the requested authority and grant the fire chief the authority to update the permit and parcel number as needed.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no.
No.
Let the record reflect the vote was 4-1 with Supervisor White voting no. Thank you. Okay, we're now going to move to, we are on agenda item 16A, which is discussion and possible action concerning potential waiver of fines and late fees for unpaid parking violations and whether we want to start sending those, to debt collection. Mr. Razor.
Good morning. For the record, Andrew Razor, Carson City Treasurer's Office. So in the letter that I submitted to the Board of Supervisors, it outlines essentially 2 points. The amount of debts that are no longer collectible or that would be difficult or time prohibitive to collect, and then also the use of a debt collection agency as allowed under Carson City Municipal Code. And so in looking at the items that are no longer collectible, that goes back to FY 2010. And so there's a significant amount. Total, it's 111,000. And that's for the total amount of the base fees and the penalty fees included with that. And so when I say that it's difficult to collect, so under Carson City Municipal Code, when an individual receives a parking citation, they'll get that yellow citation, that envelope on their windshield. And then the treasurer's office will then, if there's no payment, will submit the first notice. And then if no payment is made, then they'll submit the second notice as required by Carson City Municipal Code. And so after that, if there's been no payment made, that's the debt that's been sitting on the books for us to manage. And that goes all the way back again to 2010. The staff of the Carson City Treasurer's Office, it's just 6 full-time individuals, including me. And so we try to do as much as we can in managing the amount of unpaid parking citations and sending out the required notices, but it is difficult. Back in 2022, I believe, is when the ADS system, which was the system that was previously used to manage the parking citations, that became no longer supported. And at that time, that's when everything kind of essentially transferred to for lack of a better term, an Excel spreadsheet. And that's what the treasurer's office and code enforcement are using to manage the data in order for us to submit the letters and track the payments. And so that becomes time consuming as well. In looking at the municipal code again, municipal code does allow, it says may use a debt collection agency. Since I've been treasurer, that has not been something that has been done, hasn't been done for some time. And looking at this, and I know that the board back on February 25th of 2022 discussed this as far as if they were going to fund a new system and they wanted to see, you know, what the amounts would be as far as what were being collected. But at that time, and still to this time, we have not been using a debt collection agency. I think if we do that, I think that it'd be good for the Board of Supervisors to issue that, that approval, because parking citations essentially covers over 4 departments. You have code enforcement, which writes the citation. You also have the sheriff's office, which writes the parking citation, the treasurer's office, which manages the revenue collection, and then also the public works department, which has the hearing officer. And so in addition, you also have the time and effort that the city has been spending in revitalizing that downtown area. So I think that having the Board of Supervisors provide that guidance, saying that, yes, we would like to use a debt collection agency to help assist in the management of these parking ticket collection, will send a message out to the city that the city is serious about the parking citations, that we are intent on trying to get that revenue that hasn't been paid, and that the message is put out there that if they don't pay, then, you know, that could impact their credit rating or their score with that debt collection agency.
Okay. Supervisor Giomi?
Andrew, have you, you know, there's typically 2 kinds of collections, and I harken back to ambulance billing. And obviously, those are significantly higher amounts. So, you know, percentages of higher amounts are easier to palate for a company than percentages of lower amounts, obviously. So, what I'm getting at is, have you ever explored just outsourcing the billing before hard collect? Have you looked into that at all?
Are you saying as far as removing the treasurer's office from?
Yeah,
the
just
collection?
having a collection agency before hard collect, right? Because there are agencies that do billing as opposed to hard collections. Look at that up front to outsource it. And if so, maybe they're more successful because they have more tools. They're in the billing world. They have access to credit reports and may be more successful in collecting higher amounts, although you lose a percentage of that, right? But you gain the employee back.
Correct.
And then, so the way ambulance billing works is that the debt is, it's handled by a billing agency first. When they reach a point when they are no longer successful at pursuing whatever course of action they have to get that bill paid, it then gets written off like it does here, and it goes to hard collect. It doesn't go off the books completely. We could still get that money. It just stops being on the accounts receivable book for the fire department. So I guess that's my question. Have you looked into that? The potential to outsource the billing in totality?
I have not. I would have to look into that as a good possibility, sir, you know, to see what the costs were. I'd also have to have the DA's office just make sure that the legal review as far as Carson City Municipal Code, because it does say that it outlines what the duties are as far as the treasurer's office, the public works director, and assigning the hearings officer, the code enforcement. So I am not opposed at all to that. I think that would probably be another solution to this to help out with that, because it is time consuming. It's not that we're not trying to do the collection, but there's only so much time that our staff has in addition to the other duties. And so,
Well, I guess that's my point. I mean, how much time, I mean, I'm not trying to minimize the parking tickets because it's important to our businesses to turn traffic over, and I get all that. But really, how much city resources do we spend to collect $45? Seriously, you know, I guess you reach a point where it defies logic that we're dedicating a full-time person to collecting, you know, $10, $45 parking tickets a day.
correct.
So I think, you know, before I made a decision on, I'm fine writing off the the debt. I'm fine doing that, and I'm fine sending it to a hard collect agency. I don't have an issue doing that, but I would like you to look into and maybe come back at some point with the option to farm that out and see what, and then maybe the percentage is not worth it because, the fire department is probably, it was at 7% of money collected. I don't know what the number is now. It's probably right around that neighborhood. I don't think someone's going to do parking ticket billing for 7%, because 7% of $45 is not enough, but it may be 20%. I don't know what the number is, but I think it's worth exploring because I think they might be more successful, no offense, than you are because they don't have other duties.
Correct.
Their duties are to bill.
Correct.
So I'm fine doing what you're suggesting today to move this down the road, but I think that's worth exploring maybe between now and budget time. So we have an idea how we can kind of set that up.
Yes, sir, yeah, I will look into that.
Supervisor White.
Thank you. A constituent suggested that from a part of the world they're from, when a parking ticket is written, there's a lien put on the automobile that received the ticket. Do we have an opportunity to go that direction as well? Does NRS allow such a thing?
It does. So actually, in looking into this, we found with assistance from the district attorney's office that NRS 484B 527 does allow for a parking citation for a government entity to submit that parking citation to DMV to go against the registration. I found a news article that goes back to January of 2019 on KTVN where the city of Reno enacted that, where they had outstanding debt, and that essentially what they're doing is they're now submitting those unpaid parking citations on the vehicle registration to Nevada DMV. For us, the only issue, and I'm totally for it, is just how fast can we do the turnaround. So again, I go back to, we're no longer using the ADS system. We're back to using an Excel sheet. The way the news article for Reno talked about it is that they can submit within an hour. If the individual, the registered owner of the vehicle has a lien on their DMV registration, that they go pay the parking citation at Reno, and then within an hour, that is cleared with DMV. For us, because we don't have a live integrated system right now, it would be how fast can we turn that around if somebody did do that. But that is a good point and something that I would also be willing to explore as well, because I think that if you have that DMV registration component there too, that's going to have just as much teeth into the enforcement. The harder part that you have to see is what about the vehicles from out of state or, that are a little bit more difficult. But for Nevada registration, yeah, I think that would be a very good option to explore.
Seems like both of those things are worth exploring.
Correct.
Yeah.
I even had one individual, tell me about doing the scarlet letter of shame in the newspaper. I don't know if that can be done, but I mean, for property taxes, and the reason why I say it too is in property taxes, Nevada NRS 361 specifically says that we have to post that, any delinquent properties in the newspaper by a certain date. That is one thing that I've seen, at the front counter of the treasurer's office. People will come in and, why'd you put my name in the newspaper? I was going to pay it. I understand it, but by law, we are required to do that. So I don't know if that would be something we'd have to check with the DA's office as well to see if we can scarlet letter an individual. But we are looking at different scenarios here that we can assist in trying to collect these parking revenues.
So I will tell you, I worked for DMV. At that time, it was DMV and Public Safety. It was a combined agency, but certainly the tickets came in. It blocks a person's registration, their driver's license, their technical records are blocked. As far as the local government entity then getting an update immediately to, it was unnecessary. What would happen is the individual wants their document from DMV. They want their driver's license. They want their car registration. They then go to the jurisdiction to pay the ticket, and you give them the release at that moment when they pay the ticket. They take that back to the DMV and obtain their record.
Okay.
So don't use it. That won't be a barrier time-wise. Certainly then you want to clear them with the DMV, but I'm telling you, it's a form that you can stamp and say, this ticket number such and such is now cleared and paid. And so I really like that idea. But part of my overall issue is you start to look at the efficiencies, and I think that's where Supervisor Giomi was going. So let's start over with parking and the rationale and make sure we're doing the right thing. So when I went and looked at the audit and said, okay, how much do we get from the people that pay, right? The good ones that say, hey, I got my ticket. Darn it, I put my $15 in the little envelope and give it to Andy. That's only $10,000. And I look back historically. So I'm wondering about the whole thing. While I recognize that we want the turnover, and maybe that's the unknown, is how many people then get out of the parking places so we get the turnover, right? You can't, but it is a lot of money that we're spending in parking, and just what is our true value and true efficiency of that. So I really wonder about that whole thing, because we also talked before, we have some of the spots that are 20 minutes. I'm going to guess we're not enforcing that at all. Because I'm not going to have a parking guy that goes and slashes the tire and waits 20 minutes so he can give it a ticket versus the 2-hour parking, right? Those are, but I'm guessing there's also, what I can't tell, except for the bigger ticket amounts, is, parking in red zones and things like that. But are the vast majority of what you're actually seeing is the $15 time limit?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so when you look at it,
Right.
the schedule essentially is you have the $15 for your overtime parking, and then for anything from wrong wheels to the curb, yellow zone and that's the 25. The biggest one is going to be the $250, which is the handicap. And to be honest with you, most of the handicap ones that we see, a lot of times it's because somebody had a handicap placard but failed to put it in the windshield or on the dash. And so it's legitimate, but we do have those scofflaws that'll go out there and park and then, not pay for it.
But I'm just looking at these saying that's very minor, right? There's one.
Correct, yeah. To get to your question, the majority are the overtime, the $15. And so when you look at it again, a $15 parking citation, if you do not pay it at all within the designated time, it's $45. It's $15 for the base fee, and then from 31 to 45 days, it's $15, and anything after 46 days is that special assessment fee of $15, and that's that 45 right there.
And so what is, maybe this one's for the attorney. Todd's like, no. So I don't know that I'm willing just to say I'm getting rid of everything in 2023. What's the statute of limitations in the initial? What do we got? 2 years, 3 years, 4 years?
This is Todd Reese, Deputy DA. The statutes of limitations for parking tickets is a little bit gray.
Even better answers.
There is a statute of limitations for penalties imposed by statute of 2 years. However, the statutes of limitation as a whole apply only to lawsuits brought to enforce or collect. So that would prevent or permit a lawsuit. The statute of limitations itself does not apply to collections efforts, or reporting things to the DMV or other things like that. So that does not prohibit, or statute of limitations does not prohibit those actions.
Okay. Thank you. Supervisor Giomi?
Yeah, it was just 2 comments to your point. Yeah, I mean, do we scrap the whole thing? But I just think it's too important to not have 2-hour parking limits downtown. I mean, even if 80% of the time the people are self-enforcing, I think it's a benefit to our residents and businesses downtown. So I would not be for getting rid of it. And 2, I mean, I think if I agree with your hesitancy to write off the current stuff. But there's also something to be said for writing it off, hitting a spot, and doing a clean start. Just because we write it off, remember, if we turn it over to Hard Collect, doesn't mean we aren't going to get it. It just means that they're not going to work it anymore. And
I want to send it to DMV.
And
all these current ones, we could send to DMV.
well, then I would definitely be for that.
That's really what I'm after, is saying, hey, we can send the FY '22 and '23. I kind of was looking to not argue over statute of limitations or any other issues.
No,
We
I
could
would-
take the current, send it
Yep.
over, because we're likely to get it because they're going to re-register
Yeah.
their car.
No, I would.
Well,
I would
hopefully
agree with
they're getting license plates on the cars, but, right.
that. Yeah, and
So
then,
that's
then
really
we
what I
write
was
off
after.
the rest of it, yeah.
Yeah, and then the rest is fine. Not fine, but it is a process. So that's just in general. Well, let me see if there's any public comment on this item. Oh, you had another question? I'm sorry, I didn't see that.
Well, and
Wasn't
so
paying
this
attention.
builds off of what Supervisor Giomi said initially. So in the proposed motion, you know, if it wasn't utilizing a debt collection agency, but instead to subcontract to help with debt collection, is that something that we would need to vote on, or is that something that the
No, he'd
treasurer's
have to bring
office
that
can-
back.
He has to bring it back under a different
can't do that
agenda
under
item.
this.
Okay, just wanted to
Mhm.
clarify.
Denny?
Denny French, Carson City. Thank you, Mayor. One of my questions is, I'm going for ditto on two of those options. I'll let you guess which ones. But as far as contracting out, I would like to have a deal put on this that would suggest a time thing, that if we were going to do a contract with the option that was mentioned as having a collectors go to the hard whatever, if it was then going to be contracted out all the way, that it would have a time thing that we're looking at. We're going with this. If you go with it or you don't, that's one thing. But if we're going to subcontract things out, we should have any contract we sign with anybody or any changes given a date, so we don't wait just indefinitely for this opportunity to completely hire it out. I don't know if I made myself clear, but I would like to make sure anything we get into with this has some time thing on it so that we can then revisit it with the other options that have been brought up today.
It'll come back as a future agenda
But
item, so.
future is too
A
broad.
future agenda item will come back after research is done. Can't answer
Okay,
any
so, but
questions till
this
we.
doesn't tie us into any contracts at this point.
Absolutely not. That's not in this agenda item. It's just what he will pursue. And so we're okay with giving him, it's just to give him direction, other than potentially starting at a clean bill of health from FY '22 maybe. Rose, you have a comment?
Remember to push the button these days. Again, I'm Rose Kruger, and I'm a citizen resident of, excuse me, Carson City. The idea of not letting, obviously, sometimes when there's a problem, you got to draw a line and start over. I'm not quarreling that. I like the idea of a contractor in that it has natural limitations that hiring an employee and starting an office doesn't have. There's more flexibility, at least at the beginning, and we can do a cost-benefit analysis every 6 months or whatever works. And that's what I'd like to say, is make sure that the cost-benefit is there. So we spend this money to get somebody to do our hard collections. What kind of benefit? Sorry, I had surgery on it. What kind of benefit do we actually see financially with that? And so, thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any other public comment? Okay, so I'll bring it back up here, but the cost benefit, I think we've been quite clear, is not going to exist. This is a small amount of money. The cost benefit is in the fact that we will turn the vehicles over in the downtown to keep the parking clear. So I don't think any of us are indicating here that this is a winning dollar
Well,
proposition.
But
The
it's a
tickets are
broader
small,
benefit to the
but it has a
community and to the
benefit
businesses.
that you cannot quantify. I guess that's what I was trying to say earlier, right? We're unable to quantify that. The 80% that are complying, or the 90% that just do the right thing and follow the sign rules.
But to be
That's what we
clear
think.
also, this isn't about just downtown. Parking is an issue across this community.
But these tickets, may I ask, these tickets are coming from the downtown, except for He's right, the handicap and the parking in the red zones, but the actual time limit ones
Yeah.
So
are
yes,
downtown.
So
Right.
Okay,
to answer your question, we do receive the tickets for your downtown area, like around City Hall,
Right.
the Curry Street, the Telegraph Plaza, but we're also seeing them for the handicap parking, like at Costco, Walmart. We're also seeing code enforcement ones for individuals who are parking incorrectly on residential streets or having like a trailer or the tow hitch of their truck blocking the sidewalk. So we are seeing those that code enforcement is going out and writing additional types of infractions in addition to
Right.
just your basic overtime parking.
it's just 95% of them are the parking
Yeah,
tickets.
the majority is, yeah, we do see a
Yeah,
lot of those.
let's- Don't want any false sense out there. So Supervisor Giomi, are you
Yeah,
thinking
give
of
it a
a?
shot. I'll give it a shot. We'll see
Okay.
how it goes.
Proceed.
I move to waive the fines and fees from fiscal year 10 through fiscal year 21 as presented, and direct to the extent that he's willing to accept the direction, since he's an elected official as well. Maybe I should say ask the treasurer to utilize a debt collection agency for that FY10 to FY21 debt, and further to pursue additional options as discussed on the record.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. The motion carried. Was it clear?
Clear, thank you so much.
Just
I
want to make
appreciate
sure
it.
he goes, wait, did I walk away knowing what I'm doing? Okay. Yeah, there you go. Thank you so much. Okay, we're now on to agenda item 17A, which is discussion and possible action regarding 135,000 Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities grant from FEMA through Nevada Emergency Management with a 25% local match not to exceed $45,000 to hire the consultant to do our 5-year required upgrade for the Carson City Hazard Mitigation Plan. Does any member have a question of the chief?
Nope.
Pretty normal. Another plan. No questions? Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion. Supervisor Giomi.
I move to authorize submittal of the grant application and authorize the mayor to accept the grant if awarded.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Okay, we're now on to agenda item 18A, discussion and possible action to adopt on second reading Bill number 101, a proposed ordinance amending our code. May I have the title, please?
Ordinance relating to zoning, amending the residential office use district to permit a child care facility use as a conditional use and providing other matters properly relating thereto.
Thank you so much. Have we had any changes from the first reading?
No.
Sullivan, no? Do I have any questions from the board? This one's pretty cut and dry. Do I have any public comment on this item? Nope, seeing none, I'll accept a motion. Would like to do this one. Supervisor Horton.
No? Go ahead.
Judy?
Second.
Okay.
I'll second.
I move to adopt on second reading. I move to adopt on second reading Bill number 101, ordinance number 2024-2.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect that was unanimous. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we're now on agenda item 19A, which is discussion and presentation on the Open Space Advisory Committee's 2022 annual report. No, Miss Boyer. Miss Budge and hello, Mark. How are you? Substitute. There you go. Pinch hit.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. I'm here today with Open Space Advisory Committee Chair Mark Kimbrough. So happy to have him here. And Lindsay sends her apologies for not being available. Before I hand it over to Mark, I just wanted to compliment the open space staff. We have a really amazing team of people, and they do so much, as you can see in the report, with very little staff. I do want to just give you a quick clarification of why you have the 2022 report. We have been short on staff and trying to fill positions, so we have done a ton of work, but weren't able to get to you with a with the report. So we wanted to make sure we're compliant with code, and we're always updating you as required. So I'll turn it over to Mark, and thank you for having us.
Great, thank you. I actually feel privileged that I was able to come in and give this report for poor old Lindsay. So, as you can see from this very lengthy report, I said they were all so busy doing all this work, they didn't have time to write the report, so. So I come from the background from doing programs like this, and this is unreal. I just couldn't believe this report. And I'm one from the board that always says, put it down, write it, make it the whole story instead of pieces of the story, because this is what you guys do. So first I want to do is I'm going to, can you make that 10 minutes on that clock so I can behave? That's
You're not under the 3-minute rule.
I
You're
know, but I mean the
actually
10 minutes.
Oh.
So that helps me move this along because there's a lot of information there. Yeah, well, I spent 50 years in this profession, so. it could-
Self-imposed time limit.
Yeah,
Do
there
it.
we
No,
go.
go ahead.
So I practice has been 12 minutes, but the first thing I want to do is I want to name the staff because they're the ones that did all the work. So I'm going to name them on this first page here. Lindsay Boy, who's not here, is the manager. Greg Berger, the trails coordinator. Jared Whitaker, the open space maintenance coordinator. Georgia Vasey and Samantha Essick don't work in that position anymore. They have a new person, Marina Lovejoy. But then there's the Chelsea Kinchloy, who was the volunteer coordinator, and that's one reason you'll see a lot more volunteer time in here, but we just very fortunate, NDOR, Nevada Department of Outdoor Rec, hired her. So now you have a Carson City person inside a nice state office. That's really
They're
special.
still in our good employees, we know.
So, and then there was Marcus Dominguez. It was also the open space team as a full-time maintenance worker, which is one of the other new positions in 2022. And there were 2 part-time people, Dennis Mike Cup, a seasonal maintenance worker. Gillian Hammonds was a trailhead caretaker, and then Casey Fox worked as a summer rec AmeriCorps intern, which is great. The Parks uses the AmeriCorps program, which is a super great program to bring staff in. All right, now she broke it into some categories. So first I'm going to talk about the history of open space. And that graph that's on that page, a lot of purchases happening. Now you watch the straight line. So as you see that straight line, that's a little wake-up call for open space to say, okay, now we got it. Let's maintain it, steward it. So you'll see a lot of these programs have to do with that now, more than acquisition by a long shot. So here's the overall is there's 7,400 acres of floodlands, ag lands, watersheds, 90 miles of trails through all these years to 2022. 50% of that came from that omnibus bill, land bill that most of you know about. And we're so fortunate to live in Carson City, and which can, well, I have to go back up, had Prison Hill and a lot of those properties, the ranch properties and stuff, and then some west side too. So we're so fortunate in this community that the public voted a tax. I mean, this is a dream world. This has become a national model, actually, for people need to understand how well that little quarter-cent plays a role in your community for open space, as these pages tell you that. And then a huge benefit is Carson River. Not many communities in the world have a nice, beautiful, open corridor of the river that most of it's public. That's a huge privilege that the city has from voting this open space from question 18 years ago. The acquisitions, there's 7,400 acres. I told you that earlier. They've spent 11 million just about in question 18 funds. They had additional monies that they've been able to gather about 9 million, and then a total of almost 20 million spent in land acquisitions. Now what they're stewards, they're looking at more grants. So that page, the third page has all the grants and all the monies that they use for grants, that apply for grants, and they do this on their own initiative. There's nobody sitting up there ahead of them saying, you will apply for these grants. They do it. This is a huge amount of money. I love the bottom of that graph that shows almost $12.5 million that they've gotten from grants, and we've spent a whole $160,000. Huge difference. And that's from staff initiative and work, because grants aren't easy to work with sometimes. Okay, I'm going to move into capital improvements projects so that they've been able to spend time now to enhance these facilities. One of the dreams years ago was to be able to go from here, Carson City, get on your bike, hike, or horse, and head to Lake Tahoe and be there. And Jeff Potter had that dream and vision. And if you've been here long enough, you've heard his name before, who I worked with a lot. So now they finished that and even won a national award for the Cap to Tahoe Trail that was in the newspaper a while ago that Muscle Powered will hopefully be able to go back and get the award. So, and there's also the Lincoln Bypass that connects to that, which you can now get at the bottom of Kings Canyon and ride a mountain bike, horse, or hike or ride all the way to Lake Tahoe. It's unreal. It's just absolutely perfect. Then the next thing on that list was the Kings Canyon Road, which is people complain Piers takes a big four-wheel drive over the rocks and it's a terrible ride. You can't get all the way to Lake Tahoe still without an ATV or a dirt bike or an e-mountain bike. But it's cleared up to the Horse Creek Ranch, which is a conservation easement that open space has. That's a really nice scenic place to go. So that's OHVs that we're at. So that's not only the passive recreation, it's active. The King Canyon Trailhead that we all know about, what a huge super deal that was. And what made that a big deal is a FLAP grant, which takes transportation people to do, not in Parks and Rec. So the collaboration with Parks with transportation, they get huge grants. Transportation has money. Recreation has a little bit of money. So they were able to build that facility using a lot of the FLAP grant. And what a great facility for a great site. Then the Prison Hill OHV area was worked on. And a lot of work had been done on that from these grants. Now I'm going to move into land management because I'm trying to behave here. So as we do programs on the lands that we own, some of the things that happen is there's a responsibility of the Carson River. So they did bird surveys. Bird surveys let them know the species are out there and how maybe to increase their presence there or how to make sure we're not doing damage to their habitat. So that's important. And they did cleanup days, which have been highly attended. And then while they're out doing cleanup days, they're actually looking at things in the river, walking the river, and there's a milfoil invasion in the river, and they're able to mitigate that. There's a noxious weed abatement program that becomes relevant, especially in an area that has disturbance in it. So they've been very good and proactive to make sure we don't end up with a big weed patch. If you look at the Truckee River below Sparks, it's White Top that owns it. I mean, you can't even get to the river. So that's not present here. And a lot of these other noxious weeds that they even have tried that. There's a note in here about the rust fungus, using a natural enemy to these thistles, and seeing how that works versus using poisons and chemicals and spraying. So they're even working at that level, which is a high level of resource management. Pollinator gardens. And they work with the prison groups, which is just great to have a prison group, and they're learning horticulture so they can raise the plants that you want to grow that overgrow the invasive species or enhance your visit on the river, like wildflowers that are on that list that you'll see on page 7. And then the Watershed Forum, they're involved with that. Carson Stewardship Water District, CWSD, is huge for the river. They're the river people. Mm-hmm. But open space has a great relationship with that and part of their program, and they've helped with the forum and be a speaker at some of the things that they do. Once a year they have a forum. It's coming up here in March. And we're actually working on another plan on the Carson River that you'll hear about more later, not today, but later with CWSD. Then the sheep project that's been here for 16 years, I think it wrote here. But we've all become familiar with the sheep, which when it first started, it was like one of the first places in the country to do sheep, and then it became headline. And it's headline every year when they let the sheep out, which is good PR for the open space program. And then one of the cool things open space does is they let the public get involved with this naming the open space areas, and they've invited the tribe to participate so we can actually do some really cool things with the tribe and give them old ancient names for those areas. If some of them became a little wealthy in how long they were, so we'd shorten them or put other names and things there. But that just engages the public with your open space program. And then there's the Prison Hill fire that happened in 2021 from a lightning strike, so that's on open space. So they went up and monitored that and made sure that there's been a regrowth there that makes sense, because a lot of times invasives move in after fires. So they've taken good care of that. So those are all those items. Then we go on to trails that were in 2022. And then you'll see this graph here, and the graph that's the first time I'd seen it when I looked at this graph. And during COVID, the hiking went kind of crazy because people were cooped up in their house and went for hikes. Trails became very important to those folks to be able to enjoy their day. So looking at some of that, if you look at Waterfall Trail in 21, 122,000 people up that trail, that's like take a number for a community of 50,000. So that was like build it and they'll come. Yeah, they came around that year. But now it's down to a reasonable level of 23,000 in 2022. Just the fact that open space collects this metrics is important. It helps the program. It shows you the type of use that's out there. There's no guess. and that the importance of good stewardship and managing, give them the right facilities. And then the issue of dogs we just addressed so that people are more comfortable with those rules. Here's all the trail projects. A new Ash Canyon Trail kiosk sign, an Ash Canyon Trail sign, an Empire Ranch trailhead, an actual whole trailhead, Odyssey Trail. A big shout out to Paul Sennett and Muscle Powered. And Muscle Power needs to get a lot of credit for what happened in here. They actually should have a table and a desk at open space because they're a huge component to what happens with open space with trails. So that trail, the Odyssey Trail, is over towards President Hill. And then there's some equestrian enhancements. So the equestrian community is small here, but they still, you want that opportunity of trails because that's part of that experience is to ride trails with equestrians and have the right kind of facilities. Then there's a Silver Saddle Ranch history panel, which is important to highlight that area, explain to people what that area is all about, that it is publicly owned. And I was with the group years ago that when BLM bought that, we all took a field trip to some ranches in Arizona and one in Colorado to look at how those facilities are managed. And we were so happy when BLM was able to obtain those properties and retain that ranching history in this. And keeping it green was our theme, keeping it green and keeping it ranching. So that's a key part of our what Carson City is. Then the historic B&T Trail, Donna Inversion, who's our sub-chair with open space, has championed a project to be able to ride, hike, or bike, not horse, ride, hike, or bike, from Douglas County all the way to Reno. And she's actually put signs on a lot of that, and I'm actually involved with another group in Reno, the Truckee Meadows Trails, that's a component that's going to hit the Tahoe to Pyramid Trail, so you can actually ride to Reno, then ride to Lake Tahoe, hike or bike. No horses for all that. But, so that was a great new connection there. So activities and events is the next section. That clock's going really slow. It's going up. Is that what it's doing? I can't have 10 minutes left if it started at 10 minutes.
No, you're good.
Am I good?
You're on a roll.
Because I've been talking a little bit faster than I normally want to talk. Because I don't want to diminish the fact of how much time and energy is put into this report. And they need to get a lot of report for that. Now, I know that probably Lindsay's going to watch this on TV later, so I don't want to make sure I miss anything. And that she's very humble. Doesn't take any credit for all this stuff, and I'm always making sure that she pats herself on the back, and the rest of the staff. Greg Bergwin's got a couple awards, and the other staff worked their tail end off. You should be very proud of these people that work in open space and all this work that they do. Activities and events, so community programs and educational. They work with the school groups. Now that you have the staff, you can get out and start working with the community, and that's that connection. And we all know we need to get the kids away from the iPhones and get them outdoors and make that connection. So they're starting to help do that. And they invite the public on these several different programs that take place that they're able to do now with the amount of staff they have. So they have community programs, and they had National Trails Day was a big ribbon cutting where the mayor was there. And that kind of celebrated the Waterfall Trail and the Kings Canyon Road and the Odyssey Trail all at one time. And they have nice kiosks up there, nice facilities. Should be very proud of that really nice facility up there. So that was one of the events. A pollinator parade. I missed the pollinator parade, but I think that Lindsay was wearing one of the bee outfits I think I saw her wearing. So I missed that. And then there's the Carson City Source Water Assessment Day, which gives the utility department a chance to be part of this, Public Works, and take them to the plant and explain how water gets to the river and the watershed and all those things we want people to understand. And open space plays a key role in that because some of the properties bought on the west side have to do with watershed. When they were doing question 18, the two biggest areas that people wanted to see property bought was the river and then the west side slopes for access and for watershed issues. Then there was a high water mark mural and disaster preparedness festival. That's a lot of words for a festival. That beautiful art that's on that under the bridge there on 5th Street. Has a high water mark, they call it. It's a nice piece of art when we were talking about art on the trails that people were enjoying that day. And that was done. Then there was a regional trails skill workshop. Carson City was involved with a regional group to train people how to build trails, lay out trails, maintain trails. And you want to have those types of training because there's a lot of people that like to do that. So you give them that opportunity, and Muscle Power usually always sends either trainers or new people to train them. Then the OHV, the grand reopening. I want to tell you that the OHV area is probably one of the top OHV areas in the country. I've done some EAs for OHV areas around Nevada, a couple other places. Doesn't anywhere near match this facility for events and bringing the OHV community out, doing it in a nice, safe place with the right facilities and park ranger staff patrolling it. It's probably one of the best in the nation, and that's why there's groups that want to be there. On the next page, we drop to adaptive mountain bike workshop. Greg has taken a role in working with this group with a gal named April Wolf in Reno, so that we can get adaptive people out there, and we just visited that on the Open Space Committee, changing our mission to be inclusive, put the word inclusive in. So these people, every chance you get, you work trails and open space areas to allow these folks to enjoy it just like everybody else does. So there was an event using the trail out of Fifth Street, which is just a perfect example of a great trail for adaptive people. Then we had remember I said transportation has all the money and recreation has a little bit of money? Well, the transportation, I used to be on the state bike board for years and had a relationship. We started doing NDOT transportation annual meeting, which was a bike board event, with the trails folks, so they combined. And we had like this theme where the pavement ends, the trail begins. So it's very inclusive, very nice, and NDOT has lots of money to do a conference that's very, very nice. So Carson City played a big role in that, was a speaker in that, and then you'll see a picture of Greg with me there, giving him an award for being an outstanding person in the trails and support. And he actually takes a lead in other organizations because Trails Connect. So you need to know what your neighbor's doing, so he takes a strong role in that. And then remember saying the volunteer activities, you have to have a volunteer coordinator. Having worked with volunteers a lot, they are not free to use and just give them a job and walk away. They're a lot of work. So they were able to hire a volunteer coordinator, and I don't know if Chelsea's been replaced yet or not. She has been replaced. That's great, because then you can get that $117,000 a year back again, easy, when you recruit a good volunteer program to do all these little projects you can do out in the community that you live in, and you can see that number and all the different projects that happen in there. It brings a real community buy-in to this. And so that, I'm going to finish with that and say that Lindsay did a wonderful job of putting pictures in there for you, metrics in there for you, narrative in there for you, and to share with you this story, a very successful story of one of the best open space programs in the country. And that's, I think I'll stop at that and thank you. And I'm under 10 minutes, whatever that was. Thank you.
Perfect presentation, and I think it's important because it is a tax that was passed, by the citizens. So I think it's wonderful to have a report that shows people what did we do with the money? What does it accomplish? Because oftentimes you don't know. You just think it's another tax, but I think it's something that's also so valued by all the residents in Carson City is our quality of life, which is directly relational, I think, to parks, recreation, and open space. And so great report, and can't wait to see the 2023 part. A little was
Soon.
sprinkled in here.
Soon,
Yeah.
Act 2.
Yeah,
I'm
but
sure Lindsay's working on it now.
but great job, truly great job. And I think it's something that I hope residents actually read, right?
That's what we want.
We do lots of plans. Well, you'll see in the state, I'm like, oh, we're good at plans. So it'll be interesting. But Supervisor White.
Thank you. Yes, indeed, a pretty good program that we should be proud of. Mark did a really good job of singing the praises of a whole lot of people, but I don't think we should overlook what Mark has done for this community over the years. I will say, while I don't attend everything that goes on, the places where I get my news, places where I do my research, Mark is in those places, doing things not only for our community, but what he does bleeds over to other communities as well. And thank you for singing everybody else's praises today, but we should sing yours as well.
Well, thank you for that, Morris.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Marie.
Here. Supervisor
Yeah,
Giomi.
I guess I just want to reiterate that, and Mark, maybe you can take back to your committee that we appreciate all of the citizens that serve on that committee, because they're representatives of our community, and you know, we always appreciate the work of our staff, certainly, but all the work that you guys do as volunteers, if you could take that back, it's very much appreciated. And we hear it, I know I hear it from the community. I'm sure the rest of us do as elected officials, just how meaningful it is to have this and have a committee that manages it so well. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Great job. Great job. Okay. It's, there's no action on this item, but if there's any public comment, I'll take it. I don't necessarily do it on just reports, but, okay, we're then going to move on to our most wonderful agenda item topic of the day. Sorry, we're going to do agenda item 20A, which is discussion and possible action regarding our cost allocation plan for next year's charge based
Yes.
on last year's answers.
Yeah, so ultimately, this will be included in our 25 budget. However, coming up with this is not an easy task. We start in November. We have a third-party consultant who goes through the final audited numbers and works with all the department directors on how much work each department is doing for the rest of the city. It's allocated out in different ways, transactions, percentage of time. However that department works for the city is how it's spread out. And so she comes up with the cost allocation plan, again, based on 23 audited numbers. And then we do some adjustments, increasing for merits and COLAs. Public Works is the only department that we do take out of 23, and we get a new allocation from Darren in Public Works because they're very large numbers in Public Works, and they can better foresee what they're going to be working on in 2025. We don't want to base the allocation on what they did work on in 23. We want to move that forward. And then that department we do a true up on to make sure that we were right. So that's the highlighted portion at the bottom of the spreadsheet. It's very standard. It increased by 3.9%, which is almost exactly our COLA and merit. So there's not a lot more to it. If you have any questions.
I think, Sherry, one of the things that's interesting to me is you go through this exercise to do a cost allocation, and it becomes the little bit of the why behind it is to say that if I were the individual departments and I had to hire a human resource person to do our hiring, what would that cost?
Right.
Versus hiring a centralized HR department and spreading the cost. And so really the objective for me is to show the efficiencies and that this is a better way to do the workload for
Yeah.
each department. And I think it
So-
also gives us something else that we take for granted sometimes. It gives us consistency of that activity across all departments, right? So I don't have an HR person doing something different at Public Works than community development and at the parks. I have one human resource department, so we get consistency of service and rules and things of that nature. But when I was taking a look the other day, I think I'm constantly running a number, and I just can't begin to say really how well Carson City does in managing its finances. Is this, when I look at cost allocation, it's under 5% of our total thing. I don't know where you could hire anything administratively
Yeah, and
for
if you,
less
if
than
you,
that. So well
yeah.
done.
Well,
Well
and
done.
if you compare like Tumwa, which
Right.
is just the water company in Reno, with what their administrative costs are with what we're charging here, it's really a minimal percentage because of the efficiencies of the consolidated municipality of Carson City.
Well, and I think that went to speaks highly for our financial well-being and how well we care and try to be efficient and effective with the dollars that we have. And oftentimes we don't get to talk to the public. And I know it seems strange I'm doing it on cost allocation, but I think it drives it home the most. One of those silent or things that we do that just people take for granted, but
Yeah.
it really speaks well to why we got such a good bond rating and things, because they look at every little aspect of what we do. So I just want to reiterate to the public and to staff, well done. It's not a document that has no value, because it
Thank
forces,
you. It
right?
is quite a lot of work, so we appreciate
It
the
really
value.
is, and I think it's not a document well understood. But I wanted to drive home that it shows you our administrative overhead and how low that really is. So kudos to the city managers, our finance policy, just great job.
I will pass that along. Thank you.
Okay. Supervisor White.
Thank you. And thank you for that explanation, which I've heard before, and I certainly appreciate the amount of work that goes into this. However, as I have said in the past, in my opinion, we know what it costs to run these departments. You put that much money in there, and these, especially the proprietary funds, that money they generate should go back on the ground from what the citizens paid for. And moving the money around in this manner is not something I believe we should be doing.
Okay. Anybody else? No? Okay, is there any public comment on this item? Mr. French?
Making sure I'm on the same page. I appreciate the report, and oh my gosh, it's pages and pages just in itself. So I'm sort of sorry that that wasn't all spelled out in some sort of visual presentation, so I could go a little slower into it. But yeah, where that money ends up going to me should be set, and I'd like to see it not necessarily move around quite as much. So my understanding might be limited, but the suggestion that Supervisor White had brought up rings a bell with me when I'm looking through this, and it doesn't help me understand. And I think it's just not, it's not that this isn't clear, but it's just not answering some of those other questions that I have. So thank you very much.
Anytime, come see us. So the purpose of the cost allocation would be, for example, what I was trying to say is, if I looked at, hey, there you go. Maybe we do ambulance fund. Let me flip around here on the ambulance. So 446. Since we've been talking about ambulance, yeah. So all this says is what we're going to do is charge, if you look at that and kind of come towards the bottom, it says amount budgeted for FY25, which is at the bottom of the worksheet. And we're in the ambulance column for Fund 501. What we're doing here is saying the services that the general fund provides to the ambulance fund. So like I said, HR services, the city manager's office,
The DA,
the
IT,
district attorney's office, all of those services that are provided, how, again, we're going to charge them $374,274. So it allocates an expense that's housed as one body and says what share belongs to each department, instead of each department having to hire their own attorney or having to hire their own HR director. It lets us pool it, and hopefully, I was trying to demonstrate, we do it a lot cheaper than each fund hiring its own people. And some say, well, why not? Maybe that's cheaper. Well, because I might only need a 10% or a 20%er, and I wouldn't even be able to hire that. Nobody's going to go to work at a 10%, right? So you pool it. You hire one and then technically cost allocate it out. So that's what this project does. It recovers expenses for the general fund across all the other ones. It allows us to charge grants, the federal government, to say you got to help pay for some of these activities for the general duties. And so
Thank
That's
you.
what it
The-
does.
The basic concept I do get, but then thank you is
You're
just
so
how
welcome.
many people are dipping into that individual fund. Thank you.
You're welcome. Do I have any other public comment? No? Okay, then I'll bring it back up here. Supervisor Horton.
I move to accept the cost allocation plan as recommended.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no.
No.
Let the record reflect that was 4 yeses, 1 no by Supervisor White. Thank you.
Thank you. As always, great discussion.
No, I think it is. I think it is. Okay, we're now going to move to agenda item. Is everybody okay? Nobody need a break? Keep on going? Okay. We're now on to agenda item 20B, which is discussion and possible action regarding staff recommended assumptions for the preparation of our fiscal 25 budget. That's hard to believe.
It
Ms.
is.
Manabu.
Thank you. So what I need from the board today is to approve the property tax rate. That is the action. However, while I have you, we also want to go over the budget projections for the fiscal year 25 year, so we make sure everybody's on the same page as we move forward in preparing that budget. I want to let you know we've already started. We started pulling data in December and getting payroll projections. We have like 10 union agreements, so it takes time to make sure all those payrolls are correct. But I'm going to go through some of the larger revenues so you know what my plan is on those. And then I'll talk a little bit about expenses, and then I'll lay out our calendar for you. And hopefully we'll have some good discussion along the way. So for property taxes this year, you're right, I didn't hit the click share thingy, the button. There we go. Ta-da! So for our property taxes this year, I did project an increase of 5%. Last year it was only 4.5%. However, I have seen a trend of 4.5%, 5% to 6% increases over the last several years. So 5% is more of a mid-range average of what we're seeing increase over the last several years. And I think that's a factor of being, now we're at the 8% and 3% caps. We're no longer having to reduce those caps.
We're getting the full
I
value.
was going to say, can you just comment that that's not, we're raising property tax?
No,
Can
we
you
are
just
not.
make
This is the
that clear that-
projected increase. And I will, as we talk about, like the assessed value is going up 9%. We have caps, so we can only increase residential property taxes no matter what the assessed value goes up. We can only increase the bill by 3% for residential and 8% for commercial. So, so we're definitely not gouging you. I am recommending that we keep the rate the same, the property tax rate. Because again, I did that little calculation I always do. What happens if we increase it by 1 cent? Without the property tax caps, we'd get $250,000 extra dollars approximately. However, with the caps in place, it's only $16,000, $16,600. And that's all on new property. So if we reduced it by 1 cent, it also reduces it by the $16,600 because we've seen such a large increase in assessed value over the years that really it's the new properties that are being affected. So it really doesn't benefit the public to reduce the rate. It doesn't benefit us to increase it. We might as well leave it the same, is my recommendation. So this is the little tax example that I go through. I did update it this year because my $250,000 house price was just unrealistic at this point in time. So we have a new build this year for $400,000. The assessed value is only 35% of that, so that's $140,000. The brand new bill would have a tax bill of $4,998. However, in 25, we're seeing a 9% increase, as I just reported, in assessed value. So that it gives us an assessed value of $152,600. So at the 3.57 without the tax cap, we would bill $5,448. However, with the tax cap, we can only bill $5,148, which is a $300 abatement. I will say our Eagle Eye mayor caught a little error on this slide. in the stuff that was provided to the public, but this slide in front of you has been corrected. So in 2026, we only see a 1% increase. It still doesn't make sense to increase the tax rate, because even if we bill at 3.57 for this same property, without the cap, it's 5,502. With the cap, it's 5,302. So we're still abating $200. If we do increase the rate to 3.66, sure, okay, without the cap, we could bill 5,641, but all of it is going to abatement. So because we can still only bill the 5,302. That is what the cap does. We would have to have a decrease in assessed value of 3% before I would ever come and say maybe we should increase the tax rate. Because you can see here it shows at a 3% decrease, we can only bill the tax rate times the assessed value at 5,337. However, the tax cap does allow us, with the 3% increase, we could increase the tax rate to the 3.66 and get that 5,461, the 3% increase. We would still be abating only $10 then. But in that situation, I might recommend, if we're hurting for money, I might recommend increasing the tax rate. But again, assessed value decreasing 3% is a huge increase, and we haven't seen that in years. So,
Well,
a pretty
and
far-fetched scenario.
if we saw properties actually declining by 3%, we're going to have other economic issues occurring within the community. And so
Exactly.
that's not necessarily the time you raise taxes.
Exactly.
Because that is really detrimental
Exactly.
to see property values actually declining.
Exactly. And this is just kind of to
Right.
show you what
Show.
has to happen to the economy for it to make sense for us to even raise tax rate. So here's just a projected property tax revenue. Because of the property tax cap, it is a very nice steady increase of 3 to 8% each year. Again, about 5%. You can see in 22 it was a 6.5% increase. In 23 it was 5.5%. This year I've been conservative in 24 to put 5%. I expect it to be 5.5%, but I'm being conservative. And then for fiscal year 25, I projected 5% as well. So I do still think these numbers are very conservative. This is our lovingly known as our cigarette slide. It's the actual property tax rate. The yellow is the city's operating. There's a special revenues, which is senior center. The capital projects fund is the green, the special revenue. School district is the white portion, and then the state and the water subconservancy. So you can see the tax rate has remained steady at 3.57 for about 8 years now. This is how we stack up as far as the other counties. The 2025 numbers aren't quite out yet. They'll be out February 15th, but they aren't quite out yet. So this is last year's, and there was absolutely no changes from 23 to 24. For consolidated taxes, I increased 2% in the 2024 budget, and I'm increasing 2% above that in the 2025 budget. Currently, with 5 months of data, we are seeing an 8% increase. That is only 5 months of data, so we do have 7 more months to go, and it's an election year, which tend to be very volatile. So I am keeping them at 2% just to make sure nothing untoward happens to the city.
Sherry.
Hopefully that's very conservative.
While I understand what the 2% for the future, we may, as a board, really want to look as we get into the finite details to look at the current fiscal year, because we'll have another month or two in revenue that will come. And when we get to a future slide, you'll see some things in our capital and potential supplementals or other activities. We may want to look at that and even say maybe we project not the 8%. I'm with Sherry on that I'm not that bold. But we may want to consider whether we want to jump that up a little bit just because we'll have 6 or 7 months of actual receipts. So I just bring that up as a thought process for everybody to keep in mind as we continue down this path.
Yeah, and depending on what sales taxes do, like if we do see a dive in the next couple of months, I probably won't go with 2% for 25. I'll probably drop that down to 1%, you know.
Right.
Obviously, the more data we have, the better projections we can make. Right now, I feel like 2% is safe. Unfortunately, I don't trust election years. You never know what's going to happen in an election year, so. Come on. So this is very, very preliminary projections of what I believe the capital is going to look like. It looks like we'll have about close to $10 million in capital for 2025. Landfills, about 3.6 million of that. There's 1% we set aside for fleet. That's $950,000. And then the 0.05 property tax for extraordinary maintenance that we set aside, it's $881,000, which leaves $4,400,000 for facilities maintenance, basically. The rest of the city's capital needs. Now, as you go down year over year, you can see I have estimated an ending fund balance increasing by 0.5% each year. That has been direction from this board for quite some time, so I'll keep doing that until told otherwise. However, each 0.5% is about $400,000. So if we decided to leave it at 11% for this year, we'd have an extra $400,000 to spend on capital. If we estimated 11% 2 years from now, we'd have an extra $800,000. So it's 0.5%, it's about $400,000 each. So as we move forward through the budget process, the departments, we did get the information out from finance to departments on February 9th for the department review of their budgets. So it is the department's time to make sure all of their salaries are correct and let us know if there's any issues. They can move money around on line items, and they have a form to complete for any supplementals for increases they're looking at requesting. And then is on there, the February 15th is when we expect, today actually, is when we expect to get the revenue projections from the state. We expect to get the CIP list from departments back and the on the 12th of February, I believe. So we'll start building that large spreadsheet. And then we have a discussion about the capital on the 6th of March, where all the directors sit together and determine critical needs so we can bring those back to recommend to the board. You'll see all of the requests as well as the ones we're recommending. So if the board feels differently than we've recommended, we can obviously nail that down at that time. Let's see, the budget revisions are due back from departments on March 1st. So that's where we can really nail down all the department budgets and make sure all the salaries are correct. And the supplementals will be heard on March 20th by the Internal Finance Committee. And then that's, again, we make those recommendations on April 18th. So on April 18th, you'll see the tentative budget, the CIP, and the supplementals, all for consideration. We do put together the tentative budget. It's due April 15th. So we put that together just with a base budget. It has no supplementals or capital in it. It's really just the contract increases in salaries. It's the base budget. We are going to present budgets and make sure we have recommendations for RTC, UFOC, and any other larger or smaller committee that is seeing the full budget. So hopefully all the numbers will be the same and the recommendations will all coincide. After we get the information on the 18th from this board and we're all on the same page, we'll add the capital and supplementals to the final budget. And then we have to bring that final budget back to this board. Unfortunately, a normal board meeting does not work this year. It has to be after the third Monday of the month. So I have just tentatively scratched in here on the 21st, but obviously that can change. It just has to be sometime between the 20th and the 31st. This board has to approve the final budget. So we'll work with city manager's office and all of you to come up with a date that is best for this board. And then the final budget is due June 1st.
Can it be on the third Monday?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sorry, on or after the third Monday. Not sooner than the third Monday. I think is how it's written, yeah.
Not later, it's sooner. Right.
Yeah, not sooner than the third, yeah.
Right.
So.
Yeah, we'll look at that. Just calendars are already,
Oh, I forgot to
pretty
tell
awful.
you, we're increasing some of the, we got a health insurance increase, which is really great, of only 7.5%. So that's good news. Unfortunately, I do have to increase the workers' comp by about 20%. 20%. We are seeing, unfortunately, a lot of claims, a lot of partial disability payments. And that fund, I don't have the $3 million reserve that we need. So we are increasing by 20%, and we'll see how that does. And hopefully that'll be enough, but I may have to reevaluate and increase more next year.
No, it's not good.
That's it.
And,
Sorry.
and workers' comp, are we self-insured on that one?
We are
Yes.
self-insured for workers' comp, yes.
Right.
Which has saved us millions upon millions upon millions of premiums, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, does anyone have any questions? Sure.
So you'll circulate that corrected slide and post it on the internet too as well?
Sure, we can.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any, before we take action to set the tax rate, is there any public comment? You can ask her later. Okay, thank you. All right, then I'll bring it back up here for a motion.
Move to direct staff to use $3.57 as the property tax rate in preparing the FY25 Carson City budget.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous again. Thanks for the hard work.
Thank you
I know
very
there's a
much.
lot more to come. All right. We are now on to agenda item 21A, which is discussion and presentation from Maurice Page, the Executive Director with the Nevada Housing Coalition. Good morning. Good morning. Come on up. I whacked it.
Apologies. Can you hear me now? All right, excellent, thank you. Maurice Page, Executive Director for the Nevada Housing Coalition. Good morning, Mayor Bagwell and Board Supervisors. This is my first time in front of you, and I've been about 4 months on the job at the coalition. So making the rounds, I live down in Southern Nevada, so don't hit on me or hurt me too much for that. But I have been up here all week just on a listening tour of sorts, talking to our leaders and various groups about what we're doing at the coalition and what affordable housing is. I know that there's, the one thing I've learned this week since I've been here is affordable housing has many different terms, right? I've heard attainable, supportive, workforce. I got a few others, but the thing about it is we want housing for all Nevadans. We want to be able to continue to push and fight for that. And so I'm just happy to be in this role and continue to advocate on behalf of affordable housing. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right in. Oh. Scroll down. All right. So we have become a trusted partner for all of Nevada. I mean, we are a 501c3 nonprofit members base. We have over 300 members currently. We started about 5 years ago with roughly maybe about 5 members in our board of directors, and over that time frame, we have been able to grow continuously. And last year was our biggest year of growth, even though the coalition went through a little bit of transition with them losing losing Christine Hess, who was the previous executive director, who was a wonderful person. I was happy to work with her. But with that being said, the fight continues. Our 3 pillars: collaboration, education, and advocacy. And what you see up here on the screen is some of the work that we're doing from an advocacy perspective. Last year was one of our best year fighting for affordable housing at the Ledge, and we was able to present the governor and talk on 50 different bills, which was phenomenal. Something that the conversation started roughly maybe back in 2017, and now it's become really full circle where we really have to address it, and we are actively engaged with talking about what we can do to provide more housing. From a collaboration perspective, again, we are working with all of our stakeholders. Again, we're listening to developers, we're listening to our jurisdictions, we're listening to our community, our seniors, and everyone that falls underneath that to figure out what is going on and what we can do to help out and bridge that gap for them to be able to afford housing going forward. And then from an education level, due to our success, we have been able to form partnerships with J.P. Morgan Chase as well as the Federal Home Loan Bank. They have given us an excess of close to $700,000 in the last couple of years to be able to train and develop the next wave of affordable housing developers, and also to provide research and provide other capacity building trainings throughout the state on affordable housing. So this is just a little bit more of a recap of the things that we've done. Again, education and training. We have regional learning collaboratives, supportive and affordable housing development, finance and construction training. So this is literally for those individuals, right, that do not understand how to pencil a deal. And so we're providing that training for them so that they understand it, because again, we didn't go to school for affordable housing, right? And so, and it's not very easy to learn the technology, or not the technology, but the education behind that. And so, again, working through Federal Home Loan Bank and J.P. Morgan Chase, we have been able to develop mentoring programs as well as develop other capacity-led projects to be able to help our developers understand what's going on. We're also even involved with the tribal community as well, and we know. And I've been in Nevada for close to 20 years, or a little over 20 years, and I've been in the housing market, working in various forms for the last 13. And I know that the tribal community was not very amendable, if that's a good word, right, of working. But we have seen some new waves from them where they want to come in and actually start working with us. And so we're happy about that partnership. Earlier, I talked about the 2023 legislative session. And so not only was we able to, either create or help compose language or support bills around housing. We was able to have a legislation housing day where we brought over 70 housing stakeholders up to the ledge and met with the leaders at B and talked to them about the urgency of housing. And so we've had, some great success with that, and we're still paving the way. And so, but some of the bills that, we're able to get across and the governor were able to sign off was, number one, AB 310, the Supportive Housing Development Fund. This is a one-shot deal of $32.7 million that will come into our community. And when we talk about housing, we talk about those folks, it's not just about getting housing, but it's about maintaining housing, right? And so this bill will allow us to provide services, workforce training, health care, substance abuse, mental health, anything and everything under that. The regulations are still being written out, and we're hopefully will be bringing that to the public within the next 60 days to see how this is going to work. And if this does work, we will start the conversation on how we can expand this and hopefully have this going throughout the state for years to come. Some of the other bills, I won't go through each of them, but AB 62, which modernizes the property tax exemption for affordable housing, and AB 213, which was a little controversial throughout some of our jurisdictions, but the Housing Modernization Act, which helps us, puts a little bit of pressure on the jurisdictions to say, hey, let's update the information, let's get the reporting of affordable housing through the pipeline so that this way we can get the development going. So we're very proud to have been able to support that and get that through. Don't know how much time I'm on, but this number, I really want, when you look at this slide, I really want you to just pay attention to that middle number of that 83,994. Now, again, that number was taken back in 2021 or 2022. That says that is the number that states that that's how many affordable housing units that we need in the state. However, due to HM&I, the Home Means Nevada initiatives, and the $500 million that came in, we have been able to develop and have in the pipeline more housing that's coming in over the next, now and even coming in over the next few years. So that number is gradually coming down. My office will be doing some research and data to, get that number a little bit, get the number updated so that this way we really know what is needed. And then also to reflect how many folks are really coming in and getting that housing, right? And sustaining that housing. We want to know that because we don't want to just throw numbers out there and not know exactly who needs the assistance. The next slide just talks about how the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, of course, defines affordable housing, and then how we as a state define it. And so Tier 1 is 0 to 60, Tier 2, 60 to 80, and Tier 3, 80 to 120. And one of the biggest things I know that when we talk about affordable housing, right, we think about low income, we think about, lowering rents and things of that nature, but we also really have to start thinking about workforce and our folks that are going to work every single day. They're doing everything possible, but yet and still they can't afford their rent. And one of the things that, the research says is that 57.3% of all Nevadans are rent burdened. That is a huge number. And basically what that means is they are paying more than 30 to 35% of their income towards rent, household, things of that nature. And so, I was just talking to someone this morning where they was talking about one of their employees, one of their tenants. It was a landlord that I was speaking to, and their tenant had their tires slashed, and so they had to replace 4 new tires. And so, but that money was taken away from their rent. So luckily the landlord was able to work with them, but they're saying, everybody's budget is super tight. And so when you're not having to pay all of that money towards rent and towards just your household expenses, any tragic event could really set you back. This number right here, this 36,187, again, this is the number that, the housing division is monitoring right now. These are the amount of numbers that are, amount of homes that are considered affordable in the state of Nevada. And the other number that I want you to really pay attention to is the last number at the bottom, the 1,118 units. That is the units for low income, severely low income. That means throughout the whole state, we only have 1,100 units. And consequently, I was just informed about a month ago that 200 of those users was taken off the market and they was converted to market rate. So that is an issue. We need to definitely develop that and look to see how we can improve on that number. this number right here, the rental market affordability again, and I'm sorry for going a little bit fast, but I know you've had a long morning, and so I want to be able to just highlight some of this stuff. But again, just looking at that first number, the $34,040, that is what a person needs to make just to live to afford a studio. And that is based on the Carson City market. So, for instance, for Washoe, it's $40,000, $42,000. For Carson, it's $34,000. So just imagine having, you would literally have to make $18 to $20 an hour just to afford a studio and live comfortably in your city. And again, this number is just talking about let me scroll back up here. The affordable and available units within Carson City in Washoe County. So again, it's kind of just highlighting what we have available and where the needs are at. All right, and we come to the end. Speak a little fast, so I apologize, but I'm definitely able to answer any questions. I would like to also state that we are having our members only town hall meeting next in March 13th at UNR. And so we will be talking to our members about what they're finding, what they're seeing is going on. We'll also be talking a little bit about policy going forward. We also will be having a networking event up here probably in April. We'll definitely get the invites out once all the information and details have been provided. And then we will also have a policy forum in July, July 25th. I will definitely make sure that you have that information. So if you would like to attend and talk about what we're looking at doing in regards to the 2025 ledge, you will be able to have some insight. And then finally, our annual Nevada Housing Conference will be held in October 16th and 17th. It will be held at the Sparks Nugget Hotel. And so I look forward to hopefully seeing each of you there. It's been a successful event. Last year we had our largest attendance. We had over 350 attendees from over 19 different states. And so we're looking to continually to build on that. So with that being said, I'll take any questions or comments.
So can you answer, when you consider affordability, you're using a 30% of the income that your household has would make it affordable for your house. Does that include the utilities or exclude the utilities?
That includes the utilities.
Oh yeah, that's just about impossible these days.
Right.
Yeah, that's really, and then I noticed so it includes utilities.
Now,
But do you just put a threshold on what that is, or you actually have the individual with their utilities, or do you guys like?
We do take the average amount, and so it pertains, or that number is reflected on each jurisdiction. So it could be, so for instance, I'll give you an example just because I'm with Southern Nevada. In Henderson, the average amount for, let's say, electricity is $112. So we have to average that out per resident for that lives in Henderson. For Las Vegas, it may be $97. And so we factor that in along with the rent.
Wow, 30%. Then the question, when I was looking at your slide, the last one that said how many units we have, but I think I realized part of it because I was like, we have more than 99 units.
Yes.
Oh, I was like, what?
Yeah, 99 per 100. 99 per 100, yes.
And this is old data too.
This is old data,
Okay.
right? This is old data. So, and mind you, I am working to get this data updated. However, this is at least our starting point to know where we at. Again, with the pandemic, things got a little bit worse, but we're working. But again, I would say that we are definitely making strides. We have been able to put a lot of funding into the state, but we just have a long way to go. And we have to recognize that.
So then my other general question is, this housing market, where do you see that we don't need subsidies? Is that everything over 120?
I would say over 120.
But the rest are subsidized, and I think it's important. We just have to recognize, if you want to reach the goal of everyone having housing,
Right,
it's subsidized, whether we
absolutely.
like it or not. The reality is it's subsidized. And so I hear a lot of times where you were talking a little bit that you meet with developers and things of that nature. And so how do you even get them in the market? Because how do you get more developers to even come to the table?
Mhm.
Because the cost to build a unit doesn't know the owner.
Right,
Right, so it
absolutely.
doesn't know if it's a 30% AMI, 120%, it doesn't know. So the
Mhm.
cost to the developer is equal, but if we want them then to access potential subsidies,
Mhm, mhm.
the paperwork is immense, and then they're signing, well, we did it because we did a particular property, but, and we're really pleased to say, we brought 160 units to bear for Carson City.
Right.
But how do I get past the barriers for them and the paperwork? Because they're going to have to sign, you have to keep this as a low-income property or inaccessible for 50 years. I mean, the amount of reporting and all of those kind of things when there's just nothing in it for them, I guess. I'm trying to understand what the incentive is for a builder and where we can work in that arena.
I think the biggest thing is education, and that's what we're dealing with, or that's what we're working with within the coalition. Is first of all, we bring them to the table. We make sure that they understand the dynamics of what affordable housing is about and why it's needed in our communities. And then I think the second part is we bring in the jurisdictions, the local jurisdictions, and we talk to them because again, it is a fight between both parties. And the thing about it is we want to be that convener that can say, let's come to the table, let's talk about solutions. Let's kind of cut through the mud as much as we can and figure out where there's a middle ground for us. And we've seen some success with that. Again, with the 500 million with the Homies Nevada, we've been able to bring close to 4,000 units online. And so, we are bringing the developers to the table. They are understanding that it's going to be some hitches, it's going to be some hiccups. But they're right as it stands right now, they're willing, they're fighting, they're fighting a little bit, but they know that, this is needed within the state.
Okay. And do you see any of the local jurisdictions or any other best practices or things across the nation that you think we're not implementing? Should we be doing housing overlays or bonus units if you'll do things? I'm just looking, have you seen something very fruitful that we should be looking at?
Absolutely. So I'm actually, and my staff and I, we're looking at other states as for seeing what they have passed. You have Florida, who's done their Live Local, where they have imposed some tax credits for developers to be able to get through with some of their new developments. You have the Montana Miracle that they've passed some new legislation. You have Vermont, they call it the Vermont Bagel, I believe it is. So where they just did a mush push of all of their regulations underneath one bill, and so they've had some success with that. And so the plan is right now is to be able to, compose a lot of these best practices that is happening around the country. And once our policy committee comes together, we're going to discuss that and see what we can create or what we can bring to the state of Nevada.
Great. Okay, thank you. Supervisor Schutte.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate this effort. And one of the things you said that I applaud you, and it is frequently left out of conversations, is it's more attaining housing. There's more to it. You have to be able to keep the housing. And so in these conversations with developers, are there conversations about having the appliances that are more efficient, that upfront cost more money, but over time cost the home owner or renter less money, and so they're better able to maintain residency?
Yes, we're having those conversations. We're looking at solar. We're working with the clean energy nonprofit to see what other areas that we can put into homes. We're talking to developers to see or to figure out what other options that they have. to ensure that, the sustainability factor can keep going up. And so we are having those conversations. Developers are recognizing that. They don't want to be held accountable or be thrown underneath the bridge in regards to, appliances or the homes not being able to, maybe even use solar. So, so we are having those conversations, and I do see that there is, sort of a turn in regards to them applying those practices within these homes, within their construction business.
That's great to hear because it is a higher cost up front.
Absolutely.
But again, if we're talking about workforce or attainable housing, it's definitely important. And then on the subject of attainable and the ability for people to actually purchase, because I think this is such an important part as well, because being able to purchase that first home, to be able to actually have a mortgage, then folks can build equity and build wealth and kind of get off the gerbil wheel, if you will. Is that part of the conversation, or is it really more about getting people under a roof?
No, it is cross-sector. And so, again, going keep referencing the Home Means Nevada, but a lot of a portion of that money was devoted to home ownership and down payment assistance. And so, again, with the rise of home costs, I can say in Northern Nevada and the rurals, the average cost is roughly about $450,000. That's just the overall average, right? Some areas are higher, some areas are a little bit lower, but that's the overall average. But the statistics show that you need to make at least $130,000 just to be able to put down a 10% down payment on your home. With using the Home Means Nevada, we have some programs where we've been able to help and assist a lot of individuals and families be able to get that down payment assistance to get them moved in. And so that is still part of the conversation. That is also part of my platform as well, to not only look at preservation of market unit rent or low-income housing and before they go to market rate, that we kind of keep them into our market, but then also home ownership.
Well, I appreciate that, and thank you for what you do. It's so needed, and you're appreciated.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay, did you change your mind? Okay. All righty. I don't see anyone else with any questions. Again, it's just a presentation, but is there anybody in the public that just wants to weigh in on housing? Ms. Sullivan.
Hope Sullivan, Community Development Director. As this board knows, in our master plan, it talks about creating housing for the population at 60 to 120% AMI as an objective. Also, the strategic plan talks about community development, working with developers of affordable housing and identifying opportunities for partnership. With that in mind, the Planning Commission was a number of months ago, maybe 6 months ago, sat with 3 home builders. Bill Brewer from the Housing Authority, Matthew Fleming from Nevada Community Housing, and Mark Turner from Silver Oak. So 2 are builders of affordable housing, 1 is market rate. What came out and impacted me the most in that conversation, I want to share that with you and with the board, is for the affordable home developers, they stop at 60% AMI. So when you get to 60% to 120% AMI, you have a gap there where there isn't any type of subsidy available.
Right.
The market rate can try as hard as he can, but with workforce issues, supply chain issues, he's where he is. And I just want to share that information with this board and with the community that we are having these conversations and that there does appear to be a gap, and I don't know how you address that gap. Thank you.
I think one of the interesting things we did, and only time will tell whether we hit the mark or not, but we did supply land to a development to be able to bring in attainable, affordable, whatever we really want to call it.
Yes.
But one of the things that we did is allow out of each, there was 2 phases of 80 units. We did have 16 of those units at market. Trying to figure out if, and that's why I really ask about best practices, does that help sustain the project? Because that's the other thing, right? You want long-term sustainability of it, because sometimes you only get subsidies and credits at the front end, but then what lets them maintain it and go on? So we did both of those with 16 units at market. And so I'll be very interested with ours to see, was that a good move? Did we help the project have sustainability? And so do you see a lot of mixed
Yes.
projects?
Yeah, they're coming in very heavily around the country. That is sort of like the new, I'll
Try.
probably say, wave of, innovation. And so we definitely need to look at that as a state and see how we can incorporate that.
Okay. Supervisor Giomi.
I guess I just, to tag on to that, I think, absent the government continuing to provide money, and I'm not sure that's a long-term sustainable solution, there has to be a way where what government does entices the industry to provide the housing, right? And so I think we're really, I personally am really interested in anything that fits into that category that works. For instance, increased density so that the builder can make a little more money to be able to offset that cost by a certain percentage becoming, 60% of AMI or 80% of AMI. And then you have the affordable ones where I think we should still continue to invest where we can in our community with land or with incentives. But that 60 to 120 market, to me, has to be some sort of a partnership where, we as a local government can say, okay, in this parcel you can build, or in this piece of land you can build 100 homes. But if you make 10% of them at 80% of AMI, we're going to let you do 120 homes.
Right.
And I think that I think that's one of the few ways where local government can do that, so that we're not constantly involved in the provision of the affordable housing market. I just read a story from Sacramento where they've streamlined the approval. I'm not advocating this for here because it implies, from what I read, that growth is uncontrolled and we have controlled growth here.
Right.
But the story in Sacramento was that they've streamlined the approval process where it's administrative. Very few things are going to planning commissions in part of Sacramento, and it's improving the speed with which developers can build, which reduce their cost and thereby allows them to intermingle affordable housing within the package. So it was an interesting story. I don't remember if it was in the Chronicle. I think it was in today's or yesterday's San Francisco Chronicle.
Okay.
So, anything along those lines that you learn about, we'd love for you to share with Hope.
Absolutely.
And, with hope that it works and with Hope Sullivan.
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you so very much for the
Thank you.
presentation, and we look forward to
Yes, I will be back.
great thoughts.
All right. Take care
We're
now.
having faith in you. We're putting a lot on you.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Go forth and do great housing work. Thank you so much. Okay, we're now on to agenda item 22, which is our non-action items. Ms. Paulson, any updates or anything to share?
Yes, just a couple. I just want to remind everyone to show up here tomorrow morning at 8:30. We have another fun meeting to canvass the vote for the 24 presidential preference primary election. Should be a quick meeting. Also, our meeting on March 7th. Yes, it's already getting to March. We will be having Board of Health on that agenda, but it looks like other than Board of Health, it will be a pretty light agenda. So.
Don't we have a meeting February 29th?
And then February 29th, we will have our board retreat in the morning. It will just be with the Board of Supervisors. And the afternoon will be a joint meeting with the Regional Transportation Commission.
And that's at what location?
At WNC in the Bristlecone.
I thought we were doing it at the hospital.
Oh,
that's okay. Same name. That's the problem. It's joint name.
Carson
Okay.
Tahoe Hospital. Sorry.
There you go. Perfect. All right. Anybody else on the board have anything to share? Supervisor Gioni?
Some tidbits from the CTA, just to keep you all informed of what's going on. Bringing a new event in, which I hope becomes an annual event. It's Arena Wars, which is the old Octagon mixed martial arts boxing event. This one, particular one, is founded by a former U.S. Marine veteran, but I don't have the date. It's either April or May, scheduled at the MAC. They're thinking that it'll bring in about 800 people, with about 40% of them coming from out of town, and they hope to make that an annual event. They've done it quite a bit in the Pacific Northwest. It's going to be loud. Okay, so
We'll put it in a quiet place, though.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. Lodging occupancy since November has been down year over year. So, we're seeing, maybe a result of lack of snow, although I think last year there was trouble getting here. So I don't know. Both occupancy is down. The average daily rates are down as well. They were mentioning that some of the Tahoe locations are offering midweek rates right now at $59 a night, and lodging properties here can't even compete with that. So, anyway, it's down. The trend is down. We'll keep monitoring it. And then a few organizations, several in town, including BEC, Western Nevada, our own Parks and Rec, school district, the library, and several nonprofits are doing a Cinco de Mayo event over that Cinco de Mayo weekend, Friday, May 3rd at Mills Park, taco contest, and then performances on Saturday the 4th and 5th at the BAC, ballet folklorico on Saturday, and Sunday danza azteca. I'm butchering those names, but anyway, just some cultural events happening in Carson over the coming months. Thanks.
Great. I just wanted to say, Lisa and I attended the RTC Campo last night, and one of the things that came up, and so Lisa said she was doing it, so I already enlisted her help last night, but I brought thoughts to me that maybe some of you are going to be reading. Are any of you doing the big read at any of our elementary schools the first week in March? If you're interested in doing that, let me know. But one of the things we thought is we would try to message crosswalk safety and things like that when we're doing our reads. We're going to look to do a little bit with the elementary students to start teaching them, because we thought, little jingles or little things work with little kids. So the Lock Eyes campaign and things of that nature to begin to try to help stem pedestrian fatalities. But if any of you are interested, let Lisa or I know. We can hook you up. But even if it's you're talking anywhere or doing anything, we'll get you some material to help us educate and
Yeah,
send
maybe you
that
can
message.
circulate that just in general. It gives us the
Okay.
opportunity wherever we are.
Wherever you are. So we'll be happy to share, but that was something we worked
Yeah,
on.
it just reiterates, as a little kiddo at Fritz School, the stop, look, and listen.
Yeah.
Those little, those short, sweet, but kids remember, and just to, especially now in the age of, there's so many competing interests, and the phones and the earbuds and all of that, to where crossing the street is more than stepping into a crosswalk. It's stopping, it's looking, it's listening, it's hearing, it's thinking.
Not looking at the phone.
Absolutely. So,
Yeah.
that friendly reminder.
Right. So we will share some material with you then.
Can we read a chapter from Stephen King's It? Is that
There you go.
Maybe.
I don't know, maybe the fifth graders.
maybe?
I might skip the kindergartners.
Might be a little much.
Okay. I don't see that anyone else has anything to share on that. Then we will go to final public comment. If we have any. Seeing that, Denny.
Thank you, Mayor. Denny French, Carson City, Nevada. I have 6 things brought to my attention by a gentleman that I admire greatly, and he probably doesn't even realize it. But he brought up something that caught my ear at an opportunity. Electric grid situations with our considerations towards electric vehicle consumption, as far as the power that they will need and our ability to supply it. That's a consideration I'd like to have just put on the plate. And plain language. I just got this a bit ago, and I've only just started to crack it open. It is the open meeting law manual, and it's the older one. And as they're bringing it to the new model, the new version, I would like them to consider plain language. It is very basic. Say it like it is. No not based on legal terms when it's not necessary, and when you can simplify and make it easier for the public. We're not getting rid of your job, but the thing is that we should make it more. Martin Luther went to church and said, listen, I'd really like you to consider putting it in plain language so that people could read the Bible themselves. And I'm not a Catholic, and I'm not necessarily religious. I am very spiritual, however, but we should be able to, as people, understand this. The next thing I'd like to bring up is the 9/11 monument. I don't know that there's been any move on considerations to its location and its safety and its care. Also would like to bring up Mills Park Road. It's not done yet. It's not in asphalt yet. Please rethink it. Review it. We have so much darn asphalt in this area. The last thing I think we need is to put it in a tranquil circumstance as it is now. The park is a beautiful place. Is every inch of it used every day? Not by people necessarily, but certainly by the environmental aspects of its helping us filter the air, helping us have a quiet space, all of those things. So thank you. And another thing is Prison Hill's considerations on the huge amount of engineering that's going to go into it. It's going to take a huge amount of reconsidering every year how we're going to relate to that engineering, where nature has been able to do very well by itself. Yes, it would have been great, I think, to put a more convenient trail for a lot of people for connectivity and for inclusiveness and all of that. But human power, like the I'm sorry, I can't think of the group's name. Muscle Power's efforts and I'm sorry, I'm just running out of time. The excellent opportunity to see other, like the state and federal parks, streets, stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Seeing no others, then thank you all very much. We are adjourned. Great meeting.